as a church community. We thank you for the organizers and those persons who will lead in this activity this evening. Walk with them, and may it be a wholesome, good activity that we all would benefit from. And so we entrust the entire proceedings into your hands and unto your care, asking you to continue to be with us as we continue the journey on, and to bless this evening's activity with your presence. Through Christ our Lord, we pray. Amen. Well, friends, again, welcome to, first of all, the Trinity Chapel. We want to welcome persons on our YouTube channel and, of course, our Facebook page. We welcome our Holy Trinity members. A special welcome to our friends of Holy Trinity, members of the Trinity Chapel, and persons from across Barbados and the wider Caribbean and even the world. We say welcome to you. It is my distinct pleasure to invite you to join us for an evening of reminiscing, of fact sharing, of storytelling, and of course, of good laughter. Tonight will be an evening of both reflection and projection. Tonight we reflect on the past. Someone once said, the past cannot be changed, forgotten, edited, or erased. It can be accepted. And so we look back at our past and we accept it, but we not only look back at our past, we also embraced the gift of present. And we take a look at or a glimpse at the future of Holy Trinity. I want to not only invite you to journey with us this evening, but to thank Mrs. Lana Fingal and the 190th Committee for their commitment, of course, their creativity, and for their careful putting together of tonight's activity. We are grateful to the entire committee for bringing yet another timely and healthy installment of the 190th activities. Again, feel welcome. Be a part of this experience, and God bless.
Good evening. My name is Devere Morel, former rector of Holy Trinity Church, and it is my privilege and my pleasure to act as your host for this evening's program. As we look at the program Holy Trinity Church, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. A very warm word of appreciation to our rector, Father Bean, for the opening prayers and remarks. We now have, and we will now listen to Mr. Jason Bino as he welcomes us as well with an icebreaker.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Bino, and I will be co-hosting with Canon Devere tonight. Sorry. We want to start with an icebreaker. And with this icebreaker, we just want you to be able to see how much you know about the Church of the Holy Trinity. There are 6 simple questions. And if you're able to unmute and answer the question, it is actually a unscrambled word. So what we want you to do is we give you a slight clue, and we want you to unmute your mic and see if you can unscramble the word for us. So right now I'll share my screen and see who can get these ones as quickly as possible. So we go on to the first one. And your clue is, sorry. I'll read it for you. We are known for producing these. We are known for producing these.
Bishops.
Bishop.
That sounds about right.
Bishops.
Bishops.
Yes, bishops. Okay, the second one. Many congregants hail from here.
Stanford.
Stanford.
Well,
Yes, it is Sanford. Somebody's been looking at my notes. He leadeth us. He leadeth us.
Bernard Bean.
Yes, it is Bernard Bean. Oh, we on a roll. He was here in 2002.
Monreal.
Monreal. Nice. And I think this will be the
Easy.
last one here. We have been doing this from November 2020.
Celebrating.
What? You've been peeping at my notes. Yes, celebrating.
198.
Finally, Church of the Holy Trinity, otherwise known as
Cathedral in the East.
the Cathedral in the East. Yes, thank you very much. So we see that we know a lot about the Church of the Holy Trinity. And as we go through tonight's proceedings, we will see how much more that we can pull from you and how much more we can get from the presenters that you would see tonight. So I leave you now in the capable hands of Canon DeVere.
I'm back with you, and what I'm supposed to be doing for these next few minutes is to reminisce on some of the events that happened while I was rector at Holy Trinity. Can anybody remember those years? It's too far away and too far gone. Anybody remember the year I was there? 1979. That's my first year at Holy Trinity. And there were lots of good things to remember and lots of strange things as well. I remember that the first week that I was there, my very first funeral at Holy Trinity, I buried a man's wife and his mother at the same funeral, side by side. And life is strange because when I returned to Holy Trinity as assistant to the now Bishop Maxwell, I was able to also hold the funeral service for the man who I buried his wife and his mother. So life is very strange. But something other than funerals, we had also had some interesting weddings at Holy Trinity. I remember one evening we were in the middle of this wedding, and when I asked the groom, "Will you take this woman to be your lawful wedded wife," or words to that effect, the man started to smile. And then he started to laugh, and then he wouldn't stop laughing. And I found out later that he had started celebrating from the day before, and he had been drinking nonstop. And so therefore, when it came to those words, it was more than he could bear. So he broke down, and we had to take him outside and stop the wedding for about 10 minutes. Another interesting point was another wedding. I started the wedding, the beginning, first hymn, and then the groom leaned over to me and said, "Father, I would like you to go slowly. The best man forgot the ring. So he gone back for it." I said, "So where does he live?" "Oh, he doesn't live too far. He lives out Eastbourne, but he riding a bicycle." So I don't know how I managed to do it or how he managed to do it, but he was actually able to ride the bicycle to Eastbourne and come back before he got to the part which required the exchange of rings. So yes, those are two humorous instances of my stay at the Trinity. But then in my very first year, now, for the older people, you might remember that in 1979, the rectory was not the same one. And the surroundings were certainly not the same one because there were no houses between the rectory and the corner of Sanford by the crossroads. It was just simply grass or cane. And every year we would have at least one grass fire or two cane fires. And the very first one I encountered, this fire came right through from above Sanford, right through the rectory lawn, across into the churchyard. I started burning all the trees in the churchyard. Now, in those days, there were dozens and dozens of trees. I mean, clementary trees, tamarind trees, all kinds of trees. You could hardly see the churchyard for the trees. And my heart was in my hand. I had never prayed so hard before because the roof of the church was shingles. And you know, if one spark, one ember got on one of those shingles, we would need a roof. But God was good. And we got the fire out, and nothing happened to the church roof. Well, I started raising some money to put on a new roof. And I distinctly remember the first Sunday after I made my appeal, impassioned appeal from the pulpit, begging the people to put in more money because you know we need a new roof before another fire comes down and we lose our roof. And this former sexton met me at the door after. Does anybody remember a sexton by the name of Mr. Edgel?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm hearing you.
Yes, we do.
Yes, good. And Mr. Edgel had a nickname.
Rip
Everybody
up,
remembers the nickname.
rip up.
Ripper.
Ripper. So Ripper comes to me at the end of the service and he says, Father Murray, I hear you, you know. You beg real good this morning. But I ain't putting a cent more than the 25 cents I've been putting this for the last 2 years. So I realized, of course, that I couldn't get much from Ripper because he was determined only to put in 25 cents. And so, but I'm glad to say, I'm very happy to say that we were able to put the roof on and we never had the same problem with the church roof after that because we obviously had a very good roof. Um, but the other story that goes with that is that we had to bring in a tractor, push down a lot of the trees in the churchyard. And then when the tractor and the people have finished pushing down those trees, it was totally clear. And the night after that happened, some of the nurses at the district hospital did not want to work night duty because they had never realized that their wards were so close to a graveyard and they were afraid. And they gave the authorities trouble. We don't want to work tonight because we did not realize that churchyard was so close. Well, I think I've had enough talk for my first set of reminiscences. I hope that it called to mind some memories for you. If I can squeeze in a few more later on down, I will. But now we're going to listen to one of the stalwart members of Holy Trinity. He's been here forever. And we're now going to sit and listen to Mr. Lionel Edgel.
We are here in the beautiful community of St. Philip to interview a stalwart of our church, Mr. Lionel Edgel. Over to you, Lana.
Hi, Lionel. Thank you for agreeing to have this short interview with us today. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Holy Trinity, how it was back then, how it is now, and how we think you'd want it to be for tomorrow. So tell me first a little bit about how you first started to become a member of the congregation of Holy Trinity.
My journey, I believe, is associated with my grandfather. My grandfather was one of the managers at Ruby Plantation. As you know, the church is at Ruby.
Right.
And because of that arrangement, my dad, interesting this morning lesson when we read about Samuel
That
David.
have you been interviewed right now? Turn
Verse
on.
21, my grandfather sent two of his sons to the priest at Holy Trinity. I think it was Father Branch. And he employed those two guys on the same day. One guy, Uncle Ulrich, he had the keys to the church. He became sexton.
Okay.
My dad worked with the priest at his vicarage as, I will call it, indentured slave, because he looked after the vicarage. So because that journey, so my journey starts there. Obviously, that relationship between my uncle and my dad both working employed by the Church of Holy Trinity.
Right.
So obviously, there were members of the church. The children, therefore, became members of the church.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So when I was born in 1941. When I was born, I became conscious of my first priest. I became conscious of is Father Jones.
Uh-huh. Yes.
When O. Jones came to Holy Trinity, I was probably about 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the priest I identify with.
Okay.
At the time, the relationship between my dad and the priest was still very close.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now, Father Jones had no children from his wife.
Okay.
My dad worked the land for the vicarage from right across there. So each time we go to the vicarage, up to the land, his wife, Mrs. Jones, would capture me and my sister. She elected us,
Ah.
see. So that's how it really started. Then my uncle had no children.
Mm-hmm.
He was sexton. So then he didn't want to sweep the church.
Mm-hmm.
He would requisition my dad to send his two sons over.
Okay.
You see, I didn't enjoy it, and my mother was very angry about it, but that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it became, that's how the journey started.
Okay.
Then, so we go to church. In those days, we had one service in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
Sunday school, and one service in the afternoon.
Right.
We were not allowed to go to night service, but we go to church in the morning and Sunday school in the afternoon.
Okay.
In those days, the Holy Trinity was a parochial church, and the membership came out of the baptized and confirmed members of the church within the neighborhood, within a borders line. And therefore, the church will attract, in those days, the church will attract just over 100 people in the morning,
Okay.
you see,
This is for 100 for the morning service?
for the morning service.
Okay.
In those days, people never go to church every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go to church like one, but things were bad. They'll go to church like one Sunday per month.
Okay.
Um, and in the evening, all the children would go to Sunday school. We had a fairly large Sunday school class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of course, the capture was to get in the park on Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
So you go to Sunday school and then go in the park, right?
Okay.
The Sunday school, the classes at Sunday school, they had about five, to my memory, about five Sunday school teachers. And you will track a group of about between 10 to 12 people in a class.
Okay, that was a lot.
Yeah.
Compared to what we
Because,
have now.
see, we didn't have the technology.
Mm-hmm.
We had nothing to do, really.
Right.
So that was social intercourse for us. The Sunday school based on, you had to learn the collects every Sunday.
Uh-huh.
Every Sunday, every student had to repeat the collect
Mm-hmm.
and get it right. And then the teacher would go through one of the readings, morning readings, and discuss that.
Mm-hmm.
So Sunday school ran about for an hour. Okay. So then I grew up like that. And it's when after Father Jeffrey came,
Mm-hmm.
I worked with all the priests from Father Jones. After Father Jones retired, I took a break. I think Father Merle came in just afterwards.
But after Father Jones, who came next?
After Father Jones, Father Broom, I tell you, I have the book here.
Okay.
After Father Jones, Rufus Broom came.
Right.
He didn't stay too long, and then I didn't work
But
with him.
he came around in the 70s, right? Like early 70s?
So he came to church 68 to 71.
Right, because he actually christened me.
Okay.
So I figured he had to be somewhere around
Yeah,
very
he's
early 70s.
At
and
that
so
time, I worked so hard with Father Jones that I decided I would take a break.
Mm-hmm.
And that time I changed residence. I moved from Eastbourne to town.
Okay, to town.
I moved. I went to town in 71, even though I still come to the church. So I was still coming to church, but I was living in Cook's house thing. I came back. I came back into the inner circle after Father Rose left and Father William Jensen.
Yes, I remember Father Jensen,
I
yes.
was his church warden.
Okay.
I worked with him because Jensen brought his strange theology to church. He was a ritualistic guy.
Mm-hmm.
He had a tendency to lick the cup with his tongue. That created rare problems. So many people did not want to work with him. So I served with him for his term of office. And then when he left, I had to move him out with the Christianity to get transportation moved out. After he went, then for the Devere Merle came.
Mm-hmm.
When Father Merle came, I was secretary to the church council and a member of the council. And for reason best known to me and him, I decided that I need a break. So I resigned from both church secretary and member council.
Right.
So I did not work with Father,
Morrow?
Father Merle.
Mm-hmm.
And then came the dean, Father Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm.
Father Jeffrey came, I came back to the inner circle, and then he started the ministry program.
Uh-huh.
By then, the opportunity for their people to be trained
Mm-hmm.
came forward, and he selected three of us to send them for training, Portia, Thelma, and
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that training went on for 2 years, and then when we came up that training, Pastor Assistant Ministry, he appointed us as ministers.
Okay.
Portia took over education,
Mm-hmm.
Thelma, pastoral care, and I was burdened with two ministries, hospitality, hospitality and evangelism.
Okay. So you
We just heard Mr. Lionel Edgel speak vividly about his family and how they have played a major role inside the growth of the Church of the Holy Trinity. Stay tuned for part 2 with Mr. Lionel Edgel.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Lionel, for that very interesting talk on your reminiscences of life in the Holy Trinity in your early days. Today, of course, is Father's Day. And I trust, I hope, I pray that there are quite a number of fathers who are listening and watching on this program. So what we're going to do now, Jason is going to have a small session in which we're going to try to determine who the oldest father is listening in. And I don't know how he's going to do it. I guess he has his own ideas. But we're going to give a small token, a small gift for whoever is the oldest father with us this evening.
Okay, good evening again. Yes, of course, today is Father's Day, so we could not go without representing the fathers. So, what we want you to do is the oldest father, if you think you're the oldest father in attendance, besides you, Canon, you can turn on your camera and your mic and identify yourself, and we will give you a small token of our appreciation. But you have to be able to prove that you're the oldest father. So hopefully we have some men in attendance. And it seems that we don't have any men here.
It should be Mother's Day. Only mothers and ladies? Jason, it looks as though you're going to be that.
It seems that way. All right, so what we will do then is we will wait a little longer and we can actually carry on with the program. And we will come back to the oldest father. Hopefully we get some more chiming in and we can get someone to identify themselves as being the oldest father in attendance.
Okay, so then why don't I then put in here a few of my reminiscences from way back when I was first at Holy Trinity.
Okay.
And I want to talk a little bit about the harvests that we used to have. In those days, harvests were harvests. I'm not sure if they're quite the same thing these days. But for instance, I wonder how many people will remember how we used to string the peppers on one end of the church to the other end. And we try to do something a little bit different every year. One year, my wife went into town and borrowed two mannequins. And we got those two mannequins, lady mannequins, all dressed up in harvest apparel. And we had these two ladies mannequins in the sanctuary. No, they were not dressed as all the servers, they had on nice outfits. And one lady in the congregation, sitting in the congregation, how many of you remember a lady by the name of May Clark? And May Clark is sitting next to my wife, and she turns to my wife and she says, But Mrs. Murray, don't you think that that lady who is sitting in the sanctuary should be wearing server's clothes? She's not properly. Of course, we thought that was a big laugh because she couldn't see far enough. And I also had asked the members of the congregation to bring whatever they could. I had titled the harvest of the hands, harvest of the fields, and the harvest of the souls. And one man on the harvest Sunday morning, I heard this very strange noise in church. And when I looked around, I realized that a man from Eastbourne had actually brought into the church a large chicken coop with about 12 chickens. So we had those 12 chickens for the harvest. And see me in the middle of the day, 12 o'clock on the harvest Sunday, running up to the church after it closed to feed those chickens and to make sure that I had good water. The other thing I want to share with you was something that I don't think that everybody knows. The old rectory was haunted. It was haunted. We lived there, my family and I lived there for several years, and we heard all kinds of noises and strange things happening. I'll give you one or two examples. There was a time when we had a weekend student, and this weekend student is now the Bishop of the Windward Islands, the Right Reverend Leopold Friday. In those days, of course, he was not the Right Reverend, he was just an ordinary cultural student. And we had the nickname for him, he was known as Polly. And Leopold had a key to the rectory, so he would come and go as he pleased. So one weekend, we turned up at the house after we'd been out shopping, and we saw him sitting on the roof of the veranda. The veranda had a roof, and he was there sitting on the veranda roof. A window was open, he had come through the window, and he was sitting on the roof. So we thought he was losing his mind, and we said, "So why are you sitting up there in the middle of the hot sun?" He said he kept hearing the toilet flush every 2 minutes, and he could not see anybody in the toilet, and he could not understand why it was flushing. So he decided he was going to come outside and sit on the roof because he did not want to go down the stairs. But that was one incident. There were other incidents. Another incident was when I was sitting watching television one night, and I heard these footsteps going up the stairs, and I thought that perhaps my wife had gone to put down the baby. And I came back down the stairs. She said to me, "Did you just come down the stairs?" And I said, "No, I hadn't. But I just heard somebody go up the stairs and come back down. Only the two of us were in the house." And then there were all kinds of noises. But that's another story for another day. I think now you may want to listen to somebody else beside me ramble on. And I would like to introduce to you our next interviewee, a lady who could be termed as Madam Holy Church. She is 92 years old. She has been an educator all her life, and just about everybody who's been a member of Holy Trinity knows Mrs. Alma Lucas. Good evening, Alma.
Good evening.
How are you doing today?
Pretty well. I'm good.
They tell me that you are 92, but I'm not seeing it. You look closer to 62 than 92. You've been through a lot of rectors in your time here at Holy Trinity, and I'd like you to share with us some of your experiences with those rectors. So suppose we start with perhaps former Bishop Rufus Room, or maybe you would like to tell us about the excursions, famous excursions you used to have in those days.
So you want?
I want you
Well,
what it was like when Bishop Bloom was rector of Holy Trinity. Yes, some of the things that he did while he was at Holy Trinity.
When he came to Holy Trinity, he started to work immediately He wanted the best for Holy Trinity. And I remember first thing, he set up a planning committee to help him plan these things he wanted for the church. And I was the chairman of that committee with about 11 other people from the church, including Miss Mia Clark. She was one of them. I planned all the activities, including a fair. And that was the biggest fair that I ever had at Holy Trinity. And I remember watching other things that happened there. For instance, the church army, it was in charge of the harvest. Yes, the harvest. And the proceeds from the harvest only brought in 59 cents. Then they had some other sales and they brought in just a few cents. So I thought, no, we got to get something more out of this fair. So we set it up, all the stalls around, make sure that we had everything right. And I let him know, make sure that every stall owner bring in all the money. Don't let them take home any. Leave all at the church. So how we set it up, it happened so. By that time, I had a big bullhorn going from stall to stall to make sure that everything was right. Raffling, when we made out the lucky dips, and when a piece of material looked more than worth 12 cents, we got a raffle sheet and put on the numbers, and what would be 12 cents will naturally bring 48 cents and so forth. And also, I went around and make sure that everybody doing all right, and those who were doing too well, I went around with them, and I got to some other people. I remember going to he was a member of the church too, and a shilling, 24 cents. 24 cents. It was 24 cents that time. I said, look, put your hand in your pocket and put 24 cents here. Said, I haven't got anything. And he put his hand in his pocket and 24 cents came out. And there was somebody ready to get the name onto that. Another lady went to and tell her, put 24 cents here. So my denomination, I can't put it. I said, think about the needs. Think hard, think. And while she's thinking, 24 cents came out, and Yvonne Branch was there to get her name put to that. But at the end, we had all kinds of things, the dresses, everything to think about at the fair. And the next month, and everybody brought in. And one lady refused to put in the money. She took home the money. They're doing that, so it happened. But she died. I don't know what happened. That was one. No, that was one. No, he thought he was a real great thinker though, a planner. He organized social gathering. we could meet young and old people. His aim was to bring together those married couples who had separated, leave the home, the married home, the matrimonial bed, and separated. But they were still coming to church. They were members of the church. And that was not the only thing. They were serving as in the leadership roles. How funny. Well, the function was a couples dance. Couples. That means the man and his wife will have to come together and dance a wedding night at the rectory. And that was one of the first things he did. Next, he thought about the men. So he went around and visited every home. All the homes he visited, as many as he could. And wherever the men were, he talked with them and invited them to come to Holy Trinity Church on Friday nights and play dominoes. And so there came up bus drivers, car drivers, field workers, all types of men came. And they played the dominoes and played the dominoes. And they were quite happy playing the dominoes. And you know what? Eventually those men found themselves in Holy Trinity Church every Sunday morning. And not only that, well, they're at church now, they become members and so on. And out of that came the Holy Trinity Men's Fellowship. And that's the end of it. He did not stop there. He thought about his the stewardship campaign, Christian stewardship campaign. And he got some little persons together, talked with them, and sent them out in the field to visit these homes and let the people know and explain what's about how they could spend their time and their talent and their treasure to help the church. Well, I happen to be one of those persons. And I get a good bike and went around and stopped at a home. There were two people there, a man and a woman. And when the woman saw me, she started laughing. She was so happy. And they had a cordial welcome. We went in and talked with them and explained the church business with them. And I just said, no, I had heard something about this couple that earlier they wanted to get married. And they went to the priest at Old Judy. The priest was Reverend O.E. Jones and explained what they wanted, but they did not want the banns of marriage published. I don't know if he forgot or what, but he published the banns and they did not get married at that time. So all that time now, when I visited, they were still there, just together, not married. But that was in the back of my mind, because I heard that. So what I told the priest, room, what I understood, but I also told her before I left, I said, remember he would go out, make his visit after hours. So I told her, I'm going to tell the priest about you. He said, Miss Luke, do warfare like. So I told him everything. And well, he didn't hesitate. Quick, so he had marriage arranged for 6 o'clock one evening. And by that, and of course, who were at this wedding, at this marriage, the priest, the groom, and the bride, and 2 witnesses, including Miss Luke. And so they got married, and they lived happily after.
Alma,
Yes.
thank you very much for that insight to some of the things that Bishop Broom did while he was rector of Holy Trinity. Now, we are going to get back to you if we can, because we know that you have lots of stories in your head, written on your paper. I have heard some of them, so we will try to get back to you to hear a few more. Right now, we have a gentleman knocking on the door. He is the present sexton of Holy Trinity Church, and we would like to hear a few words from Henderson Sargent.
Let me get back.
We are here in the beautiful community. Welcome. We're back here at the Church of the Holy Trinity with the sexton of the church, Mr. Henderson Sargent. Over to you, Lana.
So, hi, Andy. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well this evening.
Good, good. Well, this evening we wanted to invite you to sit with us for a short bit to talk a little bit about the Church of the Holy Trinity. You've been here for quite a number of years, and so we want to talk a little bit about how it was in the past, how it is now, and how and for you to give us your thoughts on how you believe it will look in the future.
Well, I've been here, as I always use the phrase, or the term rather, being born in the church. I was born in 1947, June 5th, baptized here as well. Right. And through the years, I was always in church. I had to be in church, rather, because my family, my grandmother, my mother, the entirety of the family was in church. So we had to be here.
Okay.
Morning service, night service, Sunday school. That was it.
So tell me a little bit now about how it was back then. Like, how did you mentioned you had to come to the different services, and so we knew there were different services back then versus how they are now. But tell us a little bit about what the church was like. Did we have like a large congregation? How did people dress? Did they dress any differently to how they dress now?
Well, I would say yes, it's slightly just a little different, because times have passed on, and the different types of clothing at the moment and whatever. A lot of fanfare now we're dressed in Wisconsin. I don't think it was that big in that day.
More hats or anything like that back then versus now?
Yeah, they used to had a few hats as well. But
what about the mantillas, or was that not popular in the Anglican church at the time?
I can't remember this too. It's a long time.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
So, tell us about some of the more active members in the church back then. I'm sure coming through the years, there would have been some persons who played a really active role within the church organization, whether it be on the church army, men's fellowship. Tell us about some of those persons. Just briefly mention some to us.
Yes, I could recall Mrs. Mayor Clark.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, I remember her.
You had Mr. Nichols.
Mm-hmm.
You had former sexton, Mr. Edger.
Yes.
Who was the uncle of Frank and Elson, Mr. Lewis. And the other persons, I guess they're all passed on before. Right.
But I remember, it's funny when you said that, it actually brought back memories for me too, because then I do remember Miss Clark, and I also remember Mr. Nichols, because he was really very active, in the church. So tell us a little bit what he did then in the church.
Well, he was primarily the chief. Let's say chief cook and bottle wash. And he did everything within the church, to be honest with you. But he was very quiet and calm, very polite, peaceful, a loving person.
Okay.
Yeah.
I recall seeing him on Sunday mornings and
dressed in his white
always
robe.
dressed in his white robe. Yes.
He's always on time as well. As a matter of fact, sometimes the church service went on without the priest.
Really?
Some services, some services.
Really? So he basically took control.
Yeah, he knew his work. He knew his work.
And what about Miss May Clark? I remember her, and she always sat in a particular area of the church as well.
I can remember very little about May Clark as a child, but I know she spent quite a few years on council, right? And I think she was the finance person at the time. I think she was.
Okay.
I think so. Speak under correction.
Okay. But all good stalwarts of Holy Trinity. Yeah. So we talked now about some of the prominent members, but what about the priests? Because you would have worked with quite a number of them, or you would have encountered, of course, quite a few of them as you were going to church here.
Right. I came through Reverend Jones, O.E. Jones. Right. And there's former bishop.
Right.
Bishop Brooms. And then as well as Overton Gibbs.
Oh, yes. I remember him.
Yeah. We had Reverend Jensen as well. And then he came down to Reverend Murray.
Right.
We also I came through Dr. Hall as well.
Yes, right.
And his father, Jeffrey Gibson, Dean of the Cathedral. And Margaret Williams. And this goes on right away down to Michael Maxwell.
Yes.
I don't know if person would remember that he was here for a short stint though. Reverend Estwick. I think his name was Reverend Estwick.
Yeah.
But he died a few years after.
I don't remember him. What about Reverend Guy?
Reverend Guy spent a short period of time here as well.
Right. And Guy Hewitt. I think he was here for a little bit. Yes. I remember him being here for a little bit. So how do you think the church developed? What were some of the prominent things or that stand out in your mind as it relates to some of the priests?
Yeah, through the years it has developed. It has some very good ideas which came to fruition. In particular, the concrete floor. Reverend Murrell is the person who took care of that.
So the floor wasn't concrete before that?
It was a wooden floor.
Oh, right.
And I can recall I was within the men's fellowship then, and I could recall the Sunday after service we came back here just after service finished, and we started to work. Took the wooden section out, and within a matter of hours or so we had the floor in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And the church looks slightly different because I think the windows were also replaced as well.
Yeah, those were replaced after a period of time. As a matter of fact, I think it was 1986. I speak on the correction. When I first went to England, we were looking at replacing the pews.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I took form up donations to support that, which I got. I did get some of funds to help the pews.
Okay.
So that was done under Jeffrey's time.
Oh, Father, Dean Jeffrey, Dean Gibson. So tell us now who came up with the fantastic idea of having the church air conditioned. How did that come about?
Oh, that was Dr. Maureen Williams' idea. And as a matter of fact, you can't bypass the replacement of the roof that was done under him.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And the annex was in the pipeline along with
under him as well.
Right.
So he had quite a large, quite a number of large projects that were done under his tenure.
As a matter of fact, when Bishop Michael came, then he was the person that opened the prayers on the toilet in particular.
On the annex that we have there.
But the annex was primarily built because then Dr. Williams had at the time the idea of the steel band. That is what all the steel bands do here today. And the annex really was the housing for
the steel pan.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just learned about how the church was before and how it has transformed from wooden floors and the windows into what we have today. Stay tuned.
You're still muted, Cannon.
Those were some very interesting thoughts from Henderson Sargent, as spoke to Lana just now. I remember myself, the lady May Clark, who was herself the treasurer until she was well into her 90s. And she had a good buddy in the form of another Holy Trinity stalwart after Fingal. And they had a story going around that if May Clark died before or after Fingal, that she would give him a list of who should be admitted to her funeral and who should not. And so he would stand at the door and only admit those whom she wanted to have to her funeral. She was that kind of a person, very sharp in wit, even up until her very late years. Now we're going to hear from Jason again. Jason is going to be looking after this next segment, and this is called Guess Who? I'm going to tell you all about it.
Okay, so good evening again. I'm just going to put some images up on the screen, and I want you to just unmute and see if you can tell me or guess exactly who the person is or what the organization is at the time. First one. Anyone remembers this gentleman here?
Church Army?
Captain Rupert Smith.
Like I live just above Beulah Church.
Oh. Is it Captain Rupert Smith?
Yes, it is. All right, so we go on to the next. Before we move on, does anyone have any stories that they could share about him or remember anything about him?
Nothing you can see on here.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, he carried
Yes.
the what now? Some of his church army members that had them baptized.
Okay. Mr. Lucas, you were saying something?
Yes, I know.
All right, so moving on.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
You can hear me?
So, yes.
Yes. Captain Smith was my good friend. And we had some good times together. He was, I was in charge of the triune. And well, I don't have them here to. The points he would bring, any materials he bring to me, and I put them in the triune and explain. We had the good discussions, and that he was just remember. But then talking with him, I found out that he really wanted to do something more. And I talked to Bishop Broom, Father Broom at the time, and told him about him. And he asked him, he talked with him, and told him got together. And he became the captain of the church army. His voice, his everything about it made him just fit for the captain. And he had some wonderful times with the army. And we were so close that he would invite me to certain meetings and so on. We were so close that it's only in the end, the person who had his particulars, as we say, show me his writing that he asked me to do his eulogy. And that I did the afternoon. And I still have it. So anytime you want me to read your eulogy for it, I have it. I can read it for you. And of course, the church was full with the battalions from all over the place. And somehow I'm kind of a dramatist, and I could dramatize Captain Smith. So when they hear my voice, they all look up at the coffin. They actually look. They believe that it's his voice. It was Gibson at the time, and he sat there pulling the beer that he never had in awe. And that is, I can tell that about Father.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Lucas.
The church bus.
Yes. All right, so we're going on to the next picture.
The church army would have a large concession.
Anyone would know this group here?
Youth group.
Youth group.
Yes,
Youth
the
group.
youth group.
Look at the faces. Harriet.
All right, so we're going forward again. I think this guy was mentioned earlier.
Mr. Son.
Yeah.
Mr. Edgel.
Rip up.
Yes, we heard a bit about him earlier, Mr. Oliver Edgel. And finally,
Excursion, huh?
and which group is it?
Mother's
Union.
Yes, the Mothers Union excursion.
I remember this lady up front here.
Carlotta.
All right, so I'm sure that these pictures would have brought back a fair set of memories to you. Michael Brown had put in the chat that
this is Miss Trotman here in front.
Captain was instrumental in getting the church bus. Yes. Large concerts on Trinity. So we see that a lot of persons would have been instrumental in the growth of what we know now as the current Holy Trinity Church. So we're speaking, yes, on the past, we're looking at yesterday, today, and we're looking at tomorrow. So we go back to the canon at this point.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, those photos would have brought back a lot of memories. I remember to myself when in the past, when I was at Holy Trinity, we had the parish dinner at the rectory at in the evening. The annual parish dinner was held on the rectory lawns, and we did everything ourselves, and the congregation provided the entertainment. The ladies modeled all kinds of outfits. And yes, indeed, I was a model on one occasion myself. I strutted the boardwalk, and there were people with me like Marva Beckles and Arthur Fingal and Marva Goodin. And Matt Fingal was the MC on a regular occasion. So those were the years when we had the parish dinner at the on the rectory lawns. So we're going to go back to Lana again, and she's going to be talking to Lionel Edgel for the second part of his interview.
Welcome back as we speak to Mr. Lionel Edgel as he goes into some of the events and activities that the church would have gone throughout the years.
So tell us a bit more about some of the things that happened in the church back then in terms of like, I remember things like suppers and so, which we don't have now. So tell us a little bit more about those type of
Well,
activities that you'd have.
it was usual to have fairs from Father Jones' time. We'd have fairs and excursions.
Ah, right.
We would
yes.
have large excursions. We would attack like 20-something buses.
Wow.
The excursions open to the parish,
Ah, okay.
to the parish.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sunday school children, that's what we like Sunday school for. We didn't have to pay.
Oh.
The monies that we put in on Sunday afternoon, 5 cents and 2 cents and whatnot, they guarantee a free trip
On the
on the
excursion
excursion.
bus. Mhm.
So we had large excursions during Father Jones' time, large excursions. But that came when Father Jones became very retired. I think cut it down. So then we still had the excursion up to recently, up to 4 years ago. But the excursion attraction, the fairs used to bring us. Only recently going to one annual report. I see Heather Boxfield. She raised $22,000 two fairs in 2 years.
Right.
Okay, so those were the type of things. But after we start the hospitality program, we would be on fifth Sundays, and I would decorate the front of the church with tables, sandwiches, and drinks. So when church finished, you walk out the church, and those tables they laid down.
Right.
I think. So that went on, and then what else we did? One day we had one Father Jeffrey time. Some bad boys came up from the park and entered the fair at the vicarage, and that drove the fair of God in the priest.
Yes.
And then we didn't have the fair next year, and then we switched the fair to Hilda Skiing School.
Yes.
But then suddenly the fair dried off.
Yeah,
And we
well,
had,
I've got to tell you, Lionel, I remember that fair because as a child I went to that fair, and I remember when the bad boys came
Bad boys
over
came.
and the fighting that happened.
bad boys.
And truthfully, it petrified me.
Yeah.
So from there on, and even then, as I have had young children, and so I didn't like fairs.
Yeah.
So I fully understood how it would drive the fear of God into the priest. But yeah, it was not very pleasant at all when that happened.
I wish that we would return to fairs, because fair, once properly planned, is a good money earner, but it's hard work. In fact,
Yes.
all church work is very hard work.
Yes.
Okay, in the church, I have to go back to Father Jones' time. I first became on the inner circle. 1966 was a very strange year. I was working at USI Westlands Limited, and suddenly so I called Father Jones. I said, Father Jones, I want to bring a Christmas tree to church. He said, how much would it cost me? He said, nothing. I said, nothing. He said, okay, permission granted. At the time, Desmond Goodall was my assistant, and we brought this tree up. We brought all the equipment for it, all the things, and we set the tree. Oh, what a night. When people came to midnight mass, oh my God, nobody understood what was going on. A Christmas tree in church. That same night, my sister-in-law came in from London, In those days, you could take communion unless the priest gave you permission.
Oh, okay.
So during the service, I stood in to ask him. He said, well, I'm very tired. I want to administer sacrament tonight.
Mm-hmm.
That was another problem because in those days, the laity did not do that.
Right.
The laity did not do anything so.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a teacher attached to Holy Trinity Church, you get a license to become a lay reader.
Mm-hmm.
So lay persons did not really participate at the altar. That was a frightening experience because that Sunday everybody was angry with the priest anyhow. Okay, and it went on like that. But Father Jeffrey was the first priest that in my opinion, that tend to work with the young people.
Uh-huh.
And got the young people organized. He built up, but suddenly so all those young people got strange. That overseas to study, got married, won't come back to church. he was the first priest that
Really embrace them.
embraced the young people. So he went on like that, and we continued to work in pastoral care ministry. I took Father Jeffrey, Father Monvel, Father Holder, Bad Boy Holder. Because he had that on tape. So we would keep the meetings during Lent and during the missionary month in November. It went on all the time. At those times, like you all brought your technique, but those times I had to borrow my friends' things, lights and whatnot, chairs and whatnot. And the church went on like that until Father Bishop. When Bishop came, he found a very active outreach program.
Okay.
During his time, I think that he tried to adapt it to his style, but it was not as active as the lessons that he found it.
Okay.
We need, right now, I'm not too pleased. Because the parochial members of our church is not Zoom conscious.
Oh.
Holy Trinity Church never extend your boundaries to all over the place, all over the world. Because the people who live in Lucas Street and Ruby Alley and Dunker's Alley, they're not Zoom conscious.
Right.
So we have to be careful whether we have not extended our boundaries to whosoever will.
Right.
But the people who support the church,
people.
they're bet you buy. When the pandemic first came down, we opened back, you had to carry paper bags to collect these envelopes.
Right.
These people put money in their envelopes every week.
Uh-huh.
But now they cannot get into Zoom. I'm
Right.
younger. I should have the struggle. When Paul was 14 years old, he had a complete computer in his house. You know, recently, Sandra had to teach me now
To do the Zoom and things like that, yeah.
So really, but the church is a different period.
Yes.
It is a different period. At the time I was baptized, the church was funny. If you're born around there, outside of whatnot, the church will baptize you, bond your friends there Thursday. But now the church has changed the system. The font is now, no, the font is still there.
Yes, but we now
baptism
use a
don't
little
take
small
Yeah,
one, portable one.
But I find that I would like to return to go back to font. And I would like, because people come to be baptized, they're not necessarily a member of the church.
True.
The church had its recruitment in those days by the children of the church members. But that's not possible now. And mostly people come in from overseas. They live within our boundaries. And what they do, they're church overseas.
Yes, yes.
We learned a whole host of things about the events that the Church of the Holy Trinity would have put on throughout the years. We had fairs, suppers, and even excursions. Stay tuned for part 3 with Mr. Lionel Edgell.
Thank you again, Jason. You know, I'd like some of those older members of the congregation to help me with this one. I was told that there used to be a priest at Holy Trinity who never used the purificator of a napkin which the priest used to cleanse the chalice after each person had received the chalice. I was told that this particular priest who would wait until he reached the end of the altar line, then he would hold up the cup and he would wipe around the edge of the cup with his own tongue. And then he would pass it to the next person who would be communicated. Is there anybody out there listening to me, watching me, seeing me, who remembers who this priest might have been, or who had actually experienced that?
Jensen. Father Jensen.
Who said that?
Branch.
Alma?
Branch,
Oh,
Yvonne.
I heard you for the first time. Hello, Yvonne. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
How did you guys manage with that?
Huh. A lot of people stayed away from going up to communion for quite some time.
He was also the same priest who would have to list. Hello?
Yeah. Pardon me?
Go ahead, Yvonne. You were saying something.
I was saying that a lot of people stayed away from going up to communion during his time because they didn't like that what was going on.
Okay. And if I am not mistaken, he was the same person who had the list on the church door at the beginning of every year, which would say who's the members and who is not. Yes. So that was an interesting one for me because I'd never heard or seen that one done before. Okay, so we heard from Lionel Edgeo, and now we're going to have another listen, this time to Henderson Sargent. We listen to his second part.
As we return to Mr. Henderson Sargent, he speaks about how the family dynamic is very important for the upkeep of the church. Over to you, Lana.
So you're a sexton because you weren't. Oh, how many years were you sexton for the church?
Let's see. I'm still holding on until now. But how I came into this situation was I was chairperson of the property development at the time. I was on council for a few years, so I held that position. And I would always have keys in the church, looking after work and whatever. So then it happened then that in 2004, when this original sexton go on holiday, I would have to take over and give him some slack.
Who was the original sexton? Remind us again.
It was Mr. Ford.
Okay.
And it was one Saturday morning I called Father Williams from England to find out how Mr. Charles CD was doing because we had left him now there. So we called to inquire how he was going, And Dr. Morris said to me, the sexton came to him this Saturday morning, said to him that he's finished with the job. And he said to him, no, I have a wedding this afternoon. You can't do that. So he attended to the wedding, and then when he came back, Winston Gittin, faithful member of Church Holy Trinity,
Right.
he took all the responsibility for that month that he came back. That was 2004.
204.
And Dr. Murray told me that it was out for application.
Okay.
For the person who wanted to do the job. And no person applied. So it was 2005 when we were having our annual general meeting. He called me to the office and said to me, no person applied for the job. So what I'm going to do, I said, well, I'll just stick around until some person, applied. So he said to me, no, you wouldn't be able to run for council. I said, I know that. So I'm still here. And I worked 9 years. That's my workplace to allow me to put down the time.
Right.
Which was granted. So funerals and whatever.
Right.
So I worked 9 years. I came home.
Okay.
Very much. And I'm still here doing the job.
Oh, good. And from what I see, a fantastic job too. Because I see you, one of the things I always remember with the sexton is you see you walking up and down the church with your counter. I don't see that anymore. Do you still do that?
Yes, I do. But why I don't go through this center of the aisle of the church is because I don't want to distract any person. So, some people might not know exactly the purpose for it.
Right.
And they might have things to say, so I don't want to, Right. So I need to stay to the rear end of the church.
Right.
And I will do a count, and I go to the Sanford wing and the Ruby wing. I will either walk upstairs, or if I go to the vestry, I will look up there and make a fountain down with that. The fountain is very important.
Oh, right. Yes, it would be. That's how we can tell how many people attended each services and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So, churches are very interesting organizations in terms of you see people now struggle a little bit because, of course, in COVID, you have to sit where you're given a seat. And there are some people in the church who like a favorite seat. And I mean, for me, I've been coming to church here for years myself, and I know where I like to sit. So it's a little bit uncomfortable, well, not uncomfortable, but it's a little bit different when you sit somewhere else in the church. But have you encountered any persons who, in your tenure, you encountered anybody who didn't want to sit anywhere else or really had difficulty moving to another seat?
Yes, I've encountered that. Some of them have accepted it, but I can remember one instance, I think it was at a funeral. This person came in and they sat where they shouldn't sit. And I approached them and they didn't want to move. So I just, not in a hard way, but I just explained to them the protocol is to be adhered to. And you have to do as I say. So they got up and they left and went outside.
Good. Yeah, because it's a little challenging for people. So I've observed from time to time how uneasy people get, with things like that. So we talked about the past and, some of the development and how the church was back then. But what about now? What are your thoughts on the church as it is now?
I think we as a church, we've come a long way. Right? All the priests that have been passed on, they've done their work. But somehow, my problem basically is about the youth in the church. I can recall years ago that we had a very vibrant youth group. There are many women at this time. But right now, it's very, very difficult so that I can see what is happening on the outside. And I don't want to put too much blame on the kids because they don't have the control. I think it's the parents. It's the parents. And I find that a lot of younger persons are not really coming to church, those especially who have children. And one of the trends I recognize is that, yes, babies come to the baptise. But then you don't see babies coming back, the mother coming back with the child.
To church,
I think that's one of the big problems. The question is, are they Anglicans or not? Or do they want to be within the Christian faith?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because you are right. We do see a lot of baptisms, but then, what happens after that?
Exactly.
So do you think, the organizations now, for example, Steel Pan and the band that we have on Sundays and the youth service and so, do you think that that's a step in the right direction to attract more youth?
I think it was a very good idea in the first instance. As I said earlier, it was Sunday morning about that. And we had a very vibrant Steel Pan group. But I find that over the years, we're not having the younger persons within the church to follow on. Right now, you see they're important. You see, that's a problem. And I keep stressing the point all the while, even to persons who might ask questions about our youth and whatever. The years gone by with the youth from here, we can have no problems. And today it's a completely different ball game. I could recall, I don't want to call the person's name, but it was a chap who would come to church every Sunday morning. And he was still outside. And every Sunday I would ask him, why do you stay outside when he doesn't like to go into church?
Oh, that's interesting. So then why, so he came to bring someone then, or he just liked to be on the outside?
He came with the family.
Oh,
He just didn't like to be inside. So one of the things I believe is in our society today is that we're lacking with a lot of younger persons coming to church who have children. They're not coming, so the children are not coming. And they cannot educate them about what is happening within the church. Or they're frightened to go there.
We see Mr. Henderson Sergeant speaking about the family dynamic and how it was then compared to now, especially as it relates to the youth and the young people within the church. We have, all right, good. Cool.
Well, thank you, Jason. Holy Trinity is presently celebrating 190 years of ministry to the people of Barbados. And I remember well when we celebrated 150th anniversary. One of the things we did on that anniversary is that we invited back the priests who had come out of Holy Trinity and who were now in ministry. And those we invited back to preach during our festival were the Reverend Gregston Gooding, Reverend Bernard Griffith, Reverend George Harewood, Reverend S.O. Lord. All of those persons were members of Holy Trinity, and Holy Trinity gave these sons to the church. Since then, of course, we've had Father Light and Reverend Audrey Griffith. That 150th anniversary was very important for us because it was a major milestone. We did a number of things which I don't want to list here, but it was certainly something of significance for us at that time. I'd also like to touch a little bit on the fact that we were the first church, I think, in the diocese who started having what I term fellowship Sundays, in which we would all get together in buses on a Sunday morning. Never been done before, there's always been excursions, but we would leave the church on a Sunday morning, go to Barclays Park or Fard Hill, and we would have a mass there, a service there, and then we would enjoy ourselves for the rest of the day with various games and activities. And then at the end of the evening, we would have a worship before we return to the church. So one of the another landmark items over the years at Holy Trinity. Now we're going to go back to Jason, and Jason is going to lead us through a slideshow entitled Through the Years. through the years, bringing back lots of memories. I wonder if there's anyone here who can share with us some of the memories that may have been elicited from watching those pictures. Do you recommend, do you remember anybody? Do you recognize anyone? Do you recognize any of the events that those photos capture? Just unmute your phone for a few minutes and please share with us. Yvonne, I can see you there. Sure, you must remember one or two of those things. And what about Dolores? No, I don't think Dolores may remember. But I am sure there are lots of people. What about Michael Brown? Michael, do you remember anything from those pictures? We've heard from Alma, so surely there must be somebody else there that could remember a few of those things. The pictures listed. Just unmute your mic, please, and share with us. We'll be happy to hear from you.
Sorry, Canon. I was being hampered by the technology.
Okay, you're with us now. Some memories from those photos.
Actually, I realized that some of the persons have grown quite mature now.
I would think so.
Pardon me?
I think so.
I think I recognize my sister in one of them, but I'm not sure if that was really Sandra and Shannon.
Yes. You're quite right. I thought I saw.
I thought Jason didn't do justice with that the renewal of the vows. I thought that was a very instrumental and significant photograph. I think I saw Mrs. Branch and Owen. And
that's why I called Yvonne's name. Yes,
she was there. The picture flashed along so quickly, I couldn't even see if I was in the picture.
You were not.
I was at the service, but I don't think I was able to fit in the picture.
Okay, understood.
Where would you fit in the picture?
What about Judith Newsom? I see Judith's name here. I have not heard her yet. Judith must have recognized somebody. Where are you, Judy? Okay, all right, we will move on. But before we move on to the next item that we have listed, I want to share with you some thoughts that are not my own. Yes, this is Father's Day, and I thought that perhaps we could take a little time out to speak of Father. And this person writes, a father sacrifices so that his children may have the benefit of a better education and quality of life than he had. A father will often scold and reprimand his son for poor grades at school, when sometimes he may think that the teacher is not using the best technique, or maybe it is the fault of the system. A father will spend thousands of dollars on his daughter's wedding to give her away to a man whom he thinks is not good enough for her, just so he can have grandchildren and boast that they are the brightest and the best. And this person goes on to say, there are all kinds of organizations for all sorts of people, but have you ever heard of one for dads? Children have the child care board. His wife may appeal to the women's movement. If he is an employer, his workers have the workers' union movement. If he is an employee, his boss has the employers' confederation. But dear old dad, the only movement he has is the receding of his hairline and the expansion of his waistline. Don't know how many dads that apply to tonight, but God bless them all wherever they are. Now we're going to hear for the third time from Lionel Edgel.
Welcome back to part 3 with Mr. Lionel Edgel as he speaks about where he would like to see the church going in the future.
With children. So tell us a bit more about what you think you started. So continue now to tell us a bit more what you think we should do for the future to attract those younger people.
I think that from a distance, I like what you are doing now. Thank God I took over the Christmas tree program. And like, you see, we have to go with the sense now. So the young people now they come to church, but they want to come to church that is high tech. The steel band would attract some at that time, but that is losing its, I don't know. But we have to make the church people friendly now. So more people will respond to the church, a high tech church. We have to make the Sunday school more attractive. You see, but the thing is this: that the competition is very tough. You have we found recently during the last couple of years. Remember, Bushy Park was having a rally on an excursion there.
Right.
People go to rally. So the devil is so busy trying to distract people of doing what they should do.
Right.
So the priest has to right now, he has to change his, oh dear Father, bring us over to see. He has to focus now on having home, okay, no matter what is going on, the Lord is keeping his appointment. Jesus is there. And he has to begin to preach some have first sermons to attract people. You have to go back now to Nicodemus' theory. Be baptized and be saved. See? But the church has attracted a lot of intellectual priests right now. They're steep in the presentation. But Nicodemus preached a very simple service. Be baptized and repent.
Yes, yes.
And the church has not focused a lot on using this epidemic as one of the signs of the coming Christ.
Okay.
See?
Yes.
And I think you should cash it on that. And the politicians is taking the stand of political correctness. But political correctness might lead us astray too.
True.
The church must still take its role as the people who speak, who represent God.
You recognize, though, that yes, the public has to take, the church has to take a stance. I agree with you, but you also recognize that with the kind of young people we have out there now and the different avenues they have to express themselves on social media and that kind of thing, you know, they take very strong positions. I mean, for example, when the bishop recently spoke out about the Trojan rhythm, everybody wasn't supportive of him speaking out. I was amazed about how so many people, rather than listening to his message, focused on the fact that why is he choosing to speak now? So I agree with you that the church needs to speak out a bit more, but I think we have to be strong in speaking out and recognizing that, you know, that's everybody's not going to agree with you.
The Bible prophecy said that as time gets closer, things get worse.
True.
So we have to, you young people have to continue with your technical program and try to embrace, because young people respond to music.
Yes, they do.
So we can bring music in church. We have music in church. And the old time music that people being like, the young people not like that. Okay? They want the rhythm.
Yes.
And so I believe that we are working in the right direction. I'm sorry that COVID had pushed us back somewhat. The youth organizations need to come back to town. I grew up as a YPA member, and that's the only organization with any YPA. And we do a lot of things. In fact, when we started dancing.
Dancing?
Yes.
I know you were dancing too.
Yeah, we're dancing. The YPA used to keep some dances that people of a certain could go to. Matinee dances will start about 5:30 and finish about 9:30.
Wow.
And yeah, those are dances going on. They had some strong ones, Holy Trinity, Holy Cross. They had a strong one in Christ Church. And we go support each other
Right.
dancing.
Uh-huh.
The young people don't do that type of dance anymore, but they have line dancing at church at evenings. I don't know what that's doing. But we have the instrument to attract the people.
Mm-hmm.
The thing we need is some help from the parents.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We need some help from
Yeah.
the parents, right? So that's what it is. Knowing full well, as time get closer, it's going to be difficult to serve God.
Yeah.
It's going to be very difficult. A couple of years ago, music. I was not from music, this recent music thing, because these bad boys were writing bad music for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You believe this? After dance, at Holy Trinity, Saturday evening, they asked for dance. You know what I was saying? I want to work upon you ever since. I told the girl, I can't dance to this tune.
Imagine that, Lionel.
I can't dance this tune to you. That's why I used to take my, but I like to do a lot of dance, but I always take my partners. And my
Mm-hmm.
wife was take right their payment. Because certainly these dance tunes, they put you right trouble here.
Yeah, you're very true. You're very true.
I thank you for being here. I hope you pick up some things that could be used in this thing. But you all could use, I took part in the Fedora and Bonnet Parade.
Right. Uh-huh.
You will have that on your cameras
Mm-hmm.
already, so
Mm-hmm.
you can scoop in that.
Yeah.
So it's good to see you.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you too, Lionel, and you've given me some. I'm sure you've educated us a bit about some of the things in the church. I mean, Reverend Jensen licking the cup. I couldn't remember that. And I mean, as we think about COVID now, we can't even imagine how somebody would think that something like that could be done. But you've given us a lot of information, and you've also shared with us some of your thoughts about how we should go for the future. So thank you for that, and we hope that coming forward that you will continue to be an active member of the church.
Well, I intend to work for the church until I reach that hotel, which I call
Huh.
Hotel of Immortality.
Well, thank you for that, Lionel. Thank you so much.
Lionel Edgel. Thank you very much, Lana. I first met Lionel myself many eons before I went to Holy Trinity as priest when we both worked for the same organization. It is always good. It was good to look back up to Ben, and it is always good to see him. When Lionel was talking, we had a number of interventions, and some persons were asking about the Church Lads Brigade, the Church Girls Brigade, and the AYPA. And I am wondering if there's anyone out there, man or woman, boy or girl, please unmute your mic and give us a little bit, just a few lines about your knowledge or experiences of those three organizations, whether or not you are part of it. That's the Church Lads Brigade, Church Girls Brigade, and the AYPA. I certainly myself have no knowledge of those three organizations, but perhaps you can help us. Anyone? Someone? Okay, John chapter 6, verse 5 and 4. And they all with one accord said nothing. I can say a little bit about the square dance group that I started when I was at Holy Trinity. And I believe it's still going very strong up to today. And some of the members who we started with are certainly still in the square dance group. And then, of course, there were a whole lot of the young people who were in the Sunday school and the youth group and the youth choir, which was started in my time. Many of them are still present and accounted for. Let us go then to another interview, and this time it is the last one with Henderson Sargent.
Anyone who's been to Holy Trinity within the recent years would know that when the sexton is not carrying out all of his duties, you will find him sitting right here in this spot. Let's hear more from Mr. Henderson Sargent.
Yeah, I think we are all in agreement that we need to get back to that root in church. And, you know, for me with my boys, I always said to them, I'm going to bring you to church. I'm going to raise you in the church. And then, you know, at least I want to give you that base. I want to give you that moral compass so that at some point in time, if you're going the wrong direction, there's something there that may make you stop to think and pause before you go the other way. So I do agree with you that a lot of it, a lot of what is happening now is probably focused on getting people back into the church.
Yeah, that's the problem. And we still have quite a few persons around my age who are still at Holy Trinity Church and keeping the church going. Let's say, for instance, Desmond Gooding. He's back from the States and he's back in church again.
Right.
And he was in choir when I was in choir then at that time, young.
Oh yes, you were a member of the choir too, huh?
Yeah, when I was young, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
St. Lister Harris. Quite a few guys that some have passed on, others have gone overseas.
Yeah.
But
did you go to Holy Trinity Boys or where did you go?
I went to Holy Trinity elementary school here.
Oh.
I was brought up here. As a matter of fact, my mother was born in Ghana and came here.
And was there any connection between the boys' school and the church?
Yes. And quite a few of the younger guys around the area who were school at Holy Trinity were in the church as well.
Okay.
We had CGBs and CLGs in the church, very vibrant.
Yeah, so do you think that's also a connection we probably need to reestablish, getting into the primary schools, Hilda Skeen and those a bit more?
Yes, I think I don't think if it was Father Maxwell who used to go to church, go to Holy Trinity. Yeah. As a matter of fact, every year, due to COVID this last year and this year, they haven't been here to do a service. Right? But normally they will come every year.
Okay, and do a service.
For those of the kids who are going on to secondary school.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And it was very interesting. I think it was the year before. I was surprised when they came. And the young children, this could be about 5, 6 going on, singing. Without the hymn book.
Oh, good. Very good.
Hymns, and you know, I was amazed.
That's very good.
I don't know if, but as I said, we haven't been singing them now since COVID is in. But normally when I'm at home, I suddenly hear them at the church, at the school.
Singing.
Just singing, and it's really enjoyable.
Oh, that's good.
Which means that there's still some hope. But the big problem is for the parents to come out. Otherwise the children are going to follow.
Okay.
Because really have to.
So that's an area we need to focus on.
The parents need to get out and bring the kids with them.
Okay. So tell me about the future. What do you see happening with Holy Trinity in the future? Do you see the church growing bigger? We mentioned the fact that, you know, the kids aren't really there anymore from the youth perspective. But what would you like to see? I mean, and not only in terms of the congregation, but are there any changes within the church you would like to see? Anything happening to the physical building, or say anything happening within the organization, within the church, any expansions and so? Tell us a little bit about what you think.
I think first we need to have some younger persons coming to church, to carry on. Right now we're seeing persons well in age, and there are quite a few priests that has passed through here that has really brought their ideas. That has caused even the younger ones to come on.
Okay.
Come on stream. Right. The church needs now, let's say, a cleaning up of it because of the outside, you know, the water blasting. They need to get that sorted out.
Right. Okay. Right. Like a power wash.
Power wash. Right. And that was done years ago. Only to show the differences between then and now. And Lyndon Bradford and those were the teenage boys.
Right.
And they did, and that I think that was the youth group.
Okay.
And they were very vibrant. And they more or less power washed the church thing. the exterior walls. But today now we have to look and get quotations
To get stuff like that
to get
done.
that done. So things have changed drastically
Yeah.
around the church. So I'm hoping and praying that after COVID is passed, I hope it does pass, that we can see a difference in the making.
Okay.
But we still have to fight on.
We do.
We have to fight on.
We do. Well, Hendy, thank you for sitting with me this evening.
It's a pleasure.
I hope that your face that I see as part of Holy Trinity for so many years, a welcoming face, and one that I enjoy seeing in church on Sundays when I come to church or to a funeral or so. And I wish you all the best. Thank you for all of your service to the church so far.
Thank you very much.
I remember the words of the psalmist. It is better to be a doorkeeper in the house of the Lord than to dwell in the tents of the ungodly. Thank you very much indeed, Henderson. We're going to be talking to Mr. Michael Brown in a short while, but before we get to Michael, have a listen to this. When God made the Father's hands, they were large. And an angel shook her head and said, large hands cannot manage diaper pins, small buttons, rubber bands or ponytails, or even remove splinters caused from climbing trees or cricket bats. God smiled and said, I know, but a father's hands are large enough to hold everything a small boy empties from his pockets, yet small enough to cup a child's face in them. Then God molded long, slim legs and broad shoulders. The angel chuckled. Do you realize you just made a father without a lap? God said, a mother needs a lap. A father needs strong shoulders to balance a boy on a bicycle or to hold a sleepy head on the way home from the cinema. God worked throughout the night, giving the father few words, with a firm, authoritative voice, eyes that see everything, but remains calm and tolerant. Finally, almost as an afterthought, God added tears. Then he turned to the angel and said, now are you satisfied? A father can love as much as a mother can? The angel said, nothing more. Blessed Father gave to all the fathers. And now we turn to another father, Mr. Michael Brown. Good evening to you, Michael.
Hi, good evening, Canon.
Well, you are, in a sense, Mr. Holy Trinity. You and your family have been members of Holy Trinity for eons. Share with us some of your experiences and your hopes for the future.
Okay, thanks, Canon. You would recognize that for the persons who've spoken before, I'm younger than all of them, so what I'm going to say would overlap some of the things that they would have said. But I'm hoping that I will bring a unique perspective to this discussion. For those who do not know, there were 3 Brown children, nothing to do with Sandra and Sharon. There was Herbert, Angela, and Michael. And our dad went to England in *56 when I was just over a year. So my mom in her wisdom thought that being no man in the house is gonna send us to church to be brought up and have some male influence. So we grew up in the church from a very young age. I was confirmed in 1964 on the 10th. And I joined the choir and the servers. And I stopped being a server and in the choir at 17 when I could dictate to my parents what I could do. And the thing is, I couldn't really sing a lot, but I spent a lot of time pumping the organ because at the time we had to, the organ was one of these organs that you were in the vestry and you had to pump the organ. And as a chorister, I always wish for funerals because at the time we got 30 cents for every funeral. And actually we had a bumper week. At one time we had 3 funerals, so we actually had 90 cents. These are for the sopranos, but I think the tenors and the older people got a bit more money. But one that we spoke about looking back, and I don't know if persons remembered Sam John, the funeral director, who was in Ruby Corner next to the shop. And then we had a lady called Anna, who she had a car, and she was the cleaner for the church, the churchyard, and she always had a cigarette. So that was one of the things that I always remembered about her. And another thing, as you pass the district hospital, there is a very small, you get to the gate to go into the district hospital from the side near to the church. There's a small opening there, which is walled up with you can see the new bricks as it were. But one of the things that I would want to speak about, I said was confirmed 64, and a number of us who were confirmed then are still in the church. And we actually had some great confirmation classes because we learned so much in confirmation class that when Bishop Evans asked us to deal with the catechism, we all had these new hymn books and we couldn't actually find a page to find the catechism. So I'm not sure, we probably still need to go back to confirmation class, and I'm going to call out, I think Ian Calendar and Lionel Stott were part of that with that grouping. But those were the days. Now let's I would have been around when Reverend Broom was here, but my best memories at that time was with Father Jensen. I know there was some comment about Father Jensen and his style, but I am not sure if when the 2 services were, but we had a 7 o'clock service. And I said at the time I was a server, I would serve for the 7 o'clock service and then come back and sing in the choir for the either 8 or the 8:30. Now, Reverend Jensen would go home to have a cup of tea during the services. In between the services. So at the time, Everton Light, he was also one of the servers, and we realized that time was coming for the start of the 2nd service, and we didn't see Reverend Jensen walking down the pathway from the vicarage. So Everton had said, well, let's go and see what was the problem with Father Jensen. When we went there, Father Jensen was not very well. And he said, look, I'm not feeling well. You're going to have to go and conduct the service. So Everton and I came down, but he cautioned and said, well, you cannot give communion because, we are not priests, we are not deacons. But he asked us to conduct the service. And obviously he knew that persons would have come to church expecting to have a service and would not want to go home without a service. So as good servers, and we were senior servers at the time, we conducted the service. And we thought we'd done a good job. But listen to this bit. We were told after that a certain gentleman who his sister's names were called in church today said he will never come back to Holy Trinity. And true to his word, he came back to Holy Trinity next time in a coffin to be buried. So he was upset that Everton and I would conduct the service. Little did he know at the time that Everton actually went on to become a priest. So maybe that was the start of Everton being influenced, because they said Father Jensen did not want the service to go, did not want persons to go home without having a service. So some other things that would have happened, I would have joined the PCC between 76 and 78. And a number of persons would have spoken about Mayor Clark. Mayor Clark was on council until she was, I think, 100. And she was the treasurer for all that time. And one thing that Father Jensen would ask to say to Miss Clark as the treasurer, make sure every month there's money going forward. So you would never be in deficit. And we, I don't know if persons could remember Mayor Clark's handwriting or writing hand. It was beautiful, and she kept good books. Mr. Nichols was her assistant in terms of taking the money to the bank and things like this. But I was obviously at that time a youngster and on council. Now, that said, that was Father Jensen. I went away after that, and when I came back, I would have met Reverend Jeffrey, who I understand, much to his, I don't want to speak of ill of the dead, but he came up to Holy Trinity, spoke to Mayor Clark and said, I understand Paulie Brown goes to church at Holy Trinity, so she doesn't know who Paulie Brown is. She knows Ms. Michael Brown. But Jeffrey and I had gone to the community college together, and he then, knowing my excellent community work and service, he actually put me on council. And as I like to tell persons that were trained, I then came in as a senator. But then after that, I won. I was elected to council for a number of years. And at the time, I think you were having these elections every year. So after Jeffrey left, we would have had Reverend John, who then went on to be bishop. And one of the things that Father Jeffrey had put in place, he ran the church like an organization, and everybody knew what they were supposed to do. And one of the things Reverend John said, that all he had to do is come and preach, because everything was in place. And that was the legacy that Father Jeffrey had left. One of the things in terms of Father Jeffrey, some of us to remember, I said I was on council then, when he was poached to go down to St. Leonard's, much to our annoyance. But as I said, when Reverend Broom was here, everybody loved Reverend Broom, but I told persons, I was young at the time, so I could say what I like. I said, priest come in, priest go. So what is the problem? But one of the other defining moments I had in terms of Holy Trinity, I was on council, and I was able to go with the Fingal to meet with Bishop Broom. I don't remember, Canon, you'd have to correct this. I think it's the pastoral care committee to choose, if you're going to choose a priest. So we met with
The pastoral committee.
the pastoral committee, but actually we did not meet with the full pastoral committee. We only met with Bishop Broom, and he cautioned Arthur and myself. He said, do not look for a priest who gave a stirring message at your feast of title, because that priest is showing off. He's there on a one-off, but that does not tell you how he's going to manage the council, how he's going to visit the sick, all the other things that you know in terms of what a priest should do. So he said, never be taken in by someone because they come and do this one-off presentation at your feast of title. At the time, there were young priests who were ready for their first cure, and at the time there was Trevor O'Neill and Anthony Holder, and we actually chose Anthony Holder, and he would have been here, and then after he left, I had the opportunity again, being on council and being the Synod rep, to go again to Reverend Broom to choose at the time when we chose Reverend Dr. Monreal. So I actually, those are some of the defining moments in terms I had in terms of being on council. And I think we didn't say this, but we spoke about Dr. Monreal with putting in the air conditioning and repairing the church and the floor, the general repairs in terms of the pews. But one of the things that happened under Dr. Monreal, where we installed the stained glass, which was like the replication of our community in terms of the staff glass, the stained windows above the altar. Another experience I had at Synod again, I was asked to speak on behalf of Dr. John when it came to the elections. I'm sure Dr. Canon DeVere would remember the sterling presentation I made that convinced people to vote for Reverend John. And actually, this actually happened after my presentation. We were going to lunch, and this lady came, and she never spoke to me at Synod before. And she came and she tapped me and said, "I'm going to vote for your man." So I guess I probably convinced one person that they should vote for Bishop John. But I voted for Reverend John. He became bishop, and I got turfed off the council the next elections. So I never actually got a chance to work with him. That was in 2001, and I had a really long break from council, and I came back on council in 2013. I was there for 6 years, from 2013 to 2019. I just want to say that I like the outdoor services, and people would say that they don't see me at church a lot, but at my age, I prefer the outdoors as opposed to being in church in air condition and with incense and things like this. So my visits to the church will be sparing once we are under these lockdown conditions. The future. I am concerned that we try not to offend people, and I think we paper over cracks in our relationships in the church because we don't want to offend. And I guess it's because those persons who can see me can see my care and disposition, and persons actually come to me and tell me things about their concerns with the church. And we speak about meeting people where they are, but I think we talk about it, but we do not walk the walk. And we have some persons in our church who are not happy because of some of the things that are going on. And I think if we are going to move on as a church, don't mind all this carry on about cathedral in the east and all these things. We need to stop marginalizing persons and embracing people. I know, Canon DeVere, you would have had the pew pastors, and we have in the old days district visitors. We need to embrace that. And I guess COVID would have caused us to have a hiatus in those. But we need to stop marginalizing people. We need to embrace people. We need to reach out. We are always speaking about persons get baptized and they don't come back. We need to embrace people. I think that we need to do more. And I do not have the figures. I do not know how many people we've helped in the last year with COVID, because we know thousands of persons have become unemployed. I know our numbers are down in terms of financing, but I am not sure that we as a church can say collectively that we've done all that we can do. That is my challenge to the church. Stop marginalizing persons, embrace those who we think are not like us, because as I am told, we are all children of God. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael, for an extremely thought-provoking presentation. And we know that those who have ears to hear will hear. So we're coming very close to the end of our program. We have just one last item left. We're going to be talking to a young man by the name of Joshua Harris. Joshua Harris is a young man who is 16 years old. He is of the well-known Harris family, and his father Frank is one of our very well-known members. His aunts and his uncles have all been in church, and so he stands on good ground. Joshua, are you hearing me?
Yes, Canon, I
Joshua,
am.
are you there? Good.
Yes, please.
As a young man, I am going to let you speak as Michael spoke and share with
Yep.
us your memories and your hopes and your desires for Holy Trinity going forward over the next 2 years.
Gladly, Canon. First of all, I would like to say that this is an honor to be able to speak at this event. No, my earliest memories at Holy Trinity Church were with the Reverend Dr. Maura Williams, my godfather, and I remember with him that is when youth started to get communion, which never really happened before, as I understand. Um, you would get the bread, but you wouldn't get the wine until you actually became confirmed. And I also remember those fellowship days where we would go to church and have lunch. Those days were extended when it came to Reverend Maxwell, who is now bishop, and we would stay, we would have the lunch, and we would watch movies and go home late at night. And I think those are very interactive days where you got to understand people more, and those really strengthened bonds inside of the church and really gave you exposure to different people and how people live. Uh, we also had those meeting evenings where different groups would meet at people's houses and conduct Bible study. We got, with those events, we got to get some insight into how other people perceive passages in scripture that we may not perceive the same way. After Bishop Maxwell came Reverend Bean, and I must say that with the arrival of Reverend Bean, I've seen an uptick in the among the young people in the church and the participation of youth in the church. I do think, however, that in the future we can strengthen the bonds inside the church, get really a vision of the older members of the church and from the younger members of the church, and try to find that common ground where we can create, quote unquote, a perfect church for members, so that everyone will be satisfied. Um, One benefit as of late with Reverend Bean, we conducted a survey, and personally, with my responses to my spiritual gifts, I found out that I had spiritual gifts that I did not know I had before. And those types of interactive sessions, don't matter the fact that church is prolonged, they really expose you a bit more to yourself. And it gives the priest really an idea of who can do what inside the church. And I think this is great. One other thing that I would love to see happening in the future is our members, our church family, taking a trip to our spiritual site in our holy site, sorry, in the Holy Land. And that would be great. I've heard of the churches that have done it before, and I think that would be a great excursion for us. So once again, thank you. It is an honor, and I'm willing and able to answer any questions that you have for me.
Well, thank you very much, Joshua. You have said a lot in your very short space of time. And I want to thank you very much. As the youngest person on the program tonight, you spoke well, you spoke carefully, and you also spoke forcefully. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome, Cameron.
I had said that Joshua would be the last one, but I had forgotten that I had promised Alma to say something else. Now, Alma, we've out of time, but I'm going to give you 2 minutes to just about 2 minutes to say to wrap up what you were saying.
Yes. I noticed that nobody seemed to mention Bailey's.
Bailey's
School.
Bailey's School, yes.
Yes, that's very much part of the Holy Trinity business. Because from the beginning, Holy Trinity, as I think you will know, at that time, the church managed the schools. And in our case, Holy Church managed Holy Trinity Boys School and Bailey's Girls School. Bailey's Girls School in the east is about 2.5 or more miles to the east of Holy Trinity Church. And it's in a whole of big area. And that is where, as Michael will tell you, we live above Long Bay.
Right.
And it services at Holy Trinity. And I guess if you just rack your mind, you remember it serves at Holy Trinity Church and serves at Bailey School at least once a week. And also the Sunday school and the church army meetings. Church army held the meetings both on the compound at Holy Trinity and also at Bailey School, and especially with the revival. You hear them going up in their numbers.
Yeah, undoubtedly, Bailey's at one time played a very significant role in the ministry of Holy Trinity to the wider parish. And I'm glad you reminded us about that, Alma, and I want to thank you very much for your contribution this evening as we bring our program to a close. Thank you very much indeed. Now we're going to ask Mr. Ian Callender to offer the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Reverend Bean and Mrs. Bean, Canon DeVere, our guest speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We've had a long and enlightening evening on Holy Trinity yesterday, today, and tomorrow, as seen through the looking glass. And I will therefore try to be as brief as possible. Let me first thank the 190th Anniversary Committee for graciously providing us with this opportunity to gather here this evening, and Reverend Bean for leading us off in prayer and formally welcoming us. I must mention our deep appreciation of the professional manner in which Canon DeVere managed the evening's program. And I thank you for sharing some of your experiences while you were rector here. Our appreciation is also extended to your co-host, Jason. What a wonderful job you've both done. Our thanks also to Lana Fingal for conducting some of the interviews. We were indeed fortunate to be in the esteemed company of 3 of our older members, Brother Lionel Edgell, Sister Alma Lucas, and Brother Henderson Sargent, who I consider to be pillars of this church and who in their own way continue to make meaningful contributions to our church. It was indeed a great pleasure listening to you share your experiences and memories. We thank you, and may God continue to shower you with his love and blessings. Our thanks are also extended to Brother Michael Brown, who, though not one of the elder statesmen, would have spent practically all his life at the church. Thanks, Michael, for sharing your experience and thoughts for the future. I wish to express our gratitude to Joshua for bravely sharing his vision of Holy Trinity tomorrow. We commit to support you and the other young people of the church in any way possible in fulfilling your vision. We also thank the technical team and thank you, the audience, for your presence and for assisting in making this evening the interesting and wonderful evening it was. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And permit me to remind you of our Best Chef Rev event scheduled for Saturday, July 24th. This is expected to be an in-person event for which tickets will be available soon. However, some consideration is being given for the streaming of the event at a ticketed cost as well. So keep listening for further details. Thank you, and do have a wonderful night. God bless.
And thank you for thanking us, Ian. We appreciate that. And now the last word is with Sandra Brown as she offers the closing prayer.
Good night. Let us pray. Almighty Father, we bring before you all persons in this chapel. We thank you for bringing to remembrance all those memories of Holy Trinity yesterday and today. We praise you for the insight shared for Holy Trinity tomorrow. We pray that you will continue to unite us, Lord, and reveal the vision that you have for this church, which accords to your will. Guide and strengthen us to accomplish your purpose, that our ministry will continue for another 190 years. Now, as we leave this place, protect us, our families and friends. Give us a peaceful night's rest, that we will awaken energized to do the work you've called us to do. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. Good night to all.